views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
Hey there, welcome to the Bronx Buzz. This is BronxNet's program where we talk to journalists and writers and filmmakers and photographers, really anybody involved in Bronx media. And this evening we are thrilled because we're talking to an interim editor. I think she's an editor, but we're going to talk to her. And then also we have a reporter who really does a great job for the Riverdale Press. But we are going to start right away with Síle Moloney, who is with the Norwood News, a reporter with the Norwood News technically, but she is the interim editor succeeding David Cruz for the moment. Síle, nice to see you.
Very nice to see you, Gary.
Great, thank you. And thank you for joining us. I'm just going to start and let's put this away, but you have not been feeling well. And in this day and age, that raises question marks for a lot of people and concern, really.
Right. I mean, I guess like many people, whether it's in my head or whether, you know, it's the case or not. But I mean, I had thought that I had felt minor symptoms of COVID-19. I had two doctor's appointments and one 2 weeks ago where I had like the chest pain and body ache. And then later on, I started to get the itchy eye symptom, which is one of the symptoms that Mount Sinai, excuse me, Mount
Sinai. Okay.
Mount Sinai ask about when they send out their survey. So that was just a little bit concerning, but I had another one yesterday and she said sometimes the doctor said it can take 2 to 3 weeks. So it's mild if I have it. And yeah, but thank you for asking.
Well, we certainly hope you are well. And, you know, in part, and I'm only going to mention this underscores how nice it would be if we could have enough tests, because then they could do the test, find out, and then number one, your mind would be at ease. And number two, certainly if there is a problem, you wouldn't be contagious to other people. But that is a story for another day and another issue. I do want to talk a little bit about the Norwood News. So for the moment, you're doing the editing, and I guess you're enjoying it.
Yes, thank you. Yes, so I started last Monday. It's been a little bit of a crazy situation given the current atmosphere, but I'm very, very happy to be there. And just wanted to also, on behalf of everybody at Norwood News, to pass on our condolences on the death of your mom.
Isn't that nice? That's so nice. I really do appreciate it. We've received so many comments about it and so many condolence words and words of sympathy, but I certainly do appreciate you even thinking of mentioning it. There is so much to talk about with this thing. And as you said, it's a pretty interesting time for an editor or for a reporter to be kind of moving up and taking over things. One of the things that you wrote about that I thought was fascinating, and then you told me earlier that we had to clarify a little bit. And that is that Einstein Medical Center or Albert Einstein College of Medicine was running drug trials, but you clarified that it actually is at Montefiore Medical Center. So talk a little bit about these drug trials. And listen, every one of us hopes that somebody can come up with something that'll address this thing.
Yeah, absolutely, Gary. It's a good story for the Bronx in terms of we need every bit of good news we can get right now. So we received word that there is this new drug trial treatment that's taking place at the Moses campus at Montefiore Health System. It's being carried out in conjunction with Einstein College. It involves 30 patients which are undergoing the treatment, which is taking place intravenously. So the patients are taking 200 milligrams of this new drug called remdesivir, a drug produced by Gilead pharmaceutical company. They take 200 milligrams on the first day and then 100 for the subsequent 9 days, for 10 days in total. We don't know at the moment if all patients are taking it, over the same period or if it's staggered, but it's certainly good news. It's part of an international program where a number of other countries are trying out this new drug simultaneously. And the more countries that join up, the better the hang of it.
Yeah, the possibilities would be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Let me just, I know this is probably something you can't answer, but we are all so hopeful. Wouldn't it be nice if it certainly comes out of the Bronx? It wouldn't surprise me, of course, given our large healthcare infrastructure. But is there any sense of, is this potentially a real avenue to finding either a vaccine or a cure or something that can help? Or are we so early in the process that don't even bother asking because we're just getting started?
Well, I couldn't obviously say for sure, Gary, but I did reach out to the World Health Organization to get a little bit more information. We obviously reached out to both Einstein and to Montefiore to get some more information, but they're busy saving people's lives, and it was very hard to get more information on there, understandably. However, the World Health Organization did make reference to the trial that's taking place in the Bronx. They mentioned that it's part of what's called the Solidarity Program, which is a study covering 4 different treatment options. The Solidarity Program eases up bureaucracy so that the paperwork that you would usually have to go through, to carry out these studies is very much shortened, and it, eases up the pressure on already overloaded hospitals. So
right, so they're not this, if they want to do it, it facilitates the process. I do want to ask you about, you said patients. So these are people who come to the hospital and are positive, COVID-19 positive, and then they agree to be used in this trial. Do I have that right?
Exactly, yeah. So the candidates were selected in March. The trial is already underway, and we understand that there are patients with quite a severe stage of COVID-19 who are experiencing pulmonary and chest complications. So it's important that obviously they get treated as quickly as possible. So hopefully this will be a good program.
Yeah, or a good opportunity for them. Listen, any little bit helps, and people certainly in that stage may be more desperate than somebody who's a little more healthy and that sort of thing.
Absolutely. The WHO also mentioned, incidentally, that but there's part 2 and part 3 of the program. Part 2 relates to antibodies, IDing antibodies at a later point. And then part 3, if I understand correctly, is looking at therapeutics. And it will be looking at the after the fact impact on healthcare workers and how they've been exposed to the virus. Yeah.
Well, listen, let's all cross our fingers and arms. And, if as I mentioned earlier, our large infrastructure in healthcare is worth something, this would be certainly an achievement, even if it doesn't come out of Montefiore Medical Center, but just to participate in this and have input. I mean, we're obviously all going to need to do something like that. I do want to mention very quickly, you had told me about a survey at Mount Sinai Medical Center. Talk to me a little bit about what that is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So Mount Sinai have launched a survey, which they're hoping that all New Yorkers, in as much as possible, will participate in. So whether or not you're healthy at the moment and you're not experiencing symptoms, or if you are experiencing symptoms, they'd really like to hear from you. So they can monitor how you're feeling each day and use that to further their research. So if you text COVID to 64722, so that's texting COVID, the word COVID, to 64722. You'll get an email back. They'll ask you a couple of quick questions, and then on a daily basis, they'll monitor how you're feeling.
And listen, again, it's the kind of thing like anything we can all do to help. I mean, we're all in this together, and I think that recognition, at least with the Bronx people I talk to, they understand that very well. There are so many stories that come out, and I always credit the Norwood News for coming up with just about as much as you can. You did a nice little story about a I Stay Home video by young people. Talk a little bit about that, and I think it'd be great to talk about it and give us a little pump that young people are with us in all of the problems that we're facing.
Exactly. Well, as your producer Stephen had mentioned earlier, young people are taking a little bit of a hit at the moment, where there's been some criticism of them not adhering to the social distancing. So this is certainly one positive story that we can certainly say the young people are doing a good job in helping to curtail the spread of COVID-19. So at St. Catherine's Academy in Allerton, they put together a little video holding up signs of different reasons why each student is trying to spread the word about curtailing the spread of the virus by staying at home and mentioning their own individual reasons for staying at home. The project was coordinated by Kerry Schmidt at the school, and it's just a nice little video for people to watch and to hopefully get some inspiration in terms of their reasons for staying home.
Listen, we have a lot of reasons to not be happy right now. I can tell you that right now. Let's just conclude here. The Norwood News wants to tell everybody's story. You had mentioned to me also that you're looking for obituaries, for people to submit obituaries. Why don't we talk about why you want to do that and how people can go about doing that?
Absolutely. Thank you, Gary. So obviously, we fully appreciate that it's an extremely delicate time for people out there. We're conscious that people may be going through, no more than yourself, very sad circumstances with burying family members and so on. We don't want to be intrusive in any way, but if anybody would like to send us an obituary about a loved one, they're certainly welcome to do so, and we will treat the matter, very sensitively. So I think my email address and telephone number may be appearing on the screen for people to contact us, but I can read it out. It's
sure, go ahead.
It's S. Moloney, that's SMOLONEY at norwoodnews.org, or you can call us on 718-324-4998. That's 718-324-4998.
Thank you so much for that. And listen, we're going to celebrate all these people as heroes. Let's put it that way. I do want to mention, because I'm working out of my home, and you certainly have health complications. You're running the whole ship out of your home.
Well, and because I did experience those symptoms, I'm taking the advice of officials.
Right.
I'm staying home as much as possible, but I have big shoes to fill in terms of taking over the reins from David.
Right.
He's extremely, gracious and generous with,
Right. Síle, we got to go. So I do listen. Numero uno is good health for you. Let's start there, and then after that, look, if things continue to work out at the Norwood News, we're going to be doing this probably a lot more often, and that'll be just wonderful. But really, just take care of yourself. All right.
You too, Gary. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Say hello to all our friends over there. That is Síle Moloney, the interim editor at the Norwood News. We'll be right back, and we're going to go crosstown to the Riverdale Press. Don't go away.
With coronavirus spreading, people at higher risk must take extra precautions. You're at higher risk if you're over 65 or if you have an underlying medical condition. Please visit coronavirus.gov for more information.
It looks bleak. It feels bleak. But the city isn't shut down because our public services keep working. In spite of, and in the face of, the dangers, we can count on them. And to keep them working and funded now and in the future, we need to be counted. Self-respond now to the 2020 census at my2020census.gov.
Here we are, Jerome Avenue, the heart of the Bronx. This is where I grew up. Business is booming, people are moving, everyone works hard. Nothing was handed to anyone here. I've been in here to take my passport pictures. I bought flowers here for my mother. Oh, this is where I get my smoothies, by the way. Continuation. This is what we call the O, 170th Street. It feels so Bronx. Hey, my man Fonzie. We've walked up and down the corridor, nothing but love. And I'm glad to say that Jerome is home.
Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. It is my pleasure to bring on Kirstyn Brendlen from the Riverdale Press. Kirstyn, nice to have you with us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me on.
Let's just get a little background. Now, you have been at the Riverdale Press for, I was trying to count, months, years? Where are we at?
Months. I think about 9 months. I started the end of July. So. And
a little background. Where you're from? You're from here? You're from there? You want to talk a little bit about why you got into journalism and those kinds of things?
Yeah, sure, of course. So I'm from New Jersey, which is where I am now, working from home in my living room. And I don't know, I started doing journalism in high school. I was the editor-in-chief of our high school paper. I majored in it, and then this was sort of the perfect entry job to get into a local paper and sort of get into getting to know people and the issues in the community. Yeah.
And, well, I must say, you didn't pick just any local paper. You picked one with a 50-plus year legacy of really excellent work. So I guess it helps you raise your, it's like you can't just turn in anything. You really want to do something complete.
Yeah.
What is it that motivates you? Like, what made you say, maybe that moment that the light bulb went on that made you say, this is pretty cool. I want to do this.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know that there was a particular moment. I had always really liked writing. And I think that there came a moment that I was like, I'm not really into like creative type writing as much. But I do really like being able to tell stories, and sort of there's also a historical element to it where I like that when you read old newspapers, that sort of is, I know people say this all the time, but it is the first draft of history. And even sometimes it's interesting to see when people were wrong about things, but it's what they understood at the time.
Oh, that's clever, yeah. No, that's very interesting. And then it's always interesting, I think, for all of us in the Bronx. What is your impression of covering, obviously mostly Riverdale, but being around the Bronx, and what have we taught you, I guess, would be the way to look at it.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, honestly, Riverdale being slightly more suburban is reminiscent of where I live in New Jersey in some aspects. But I don't know. I mean, the community that we cover, obviously, they're very, Riverdale and the surrounding area is very like informed. Everyone always really knows what's going on, and we get tons of phone calls and emails. And I think that's been like really great, is having people who are engaged and want to let us know what's going on, and also want to read what's happening.
I think that reaches back to the legacy of that particular newspaper, because two things are at play there. Number one, they've been doing exactly that for all this time, so people are kind of used to having that outlet. But also, again, it goes back to they've done it very well, and so again, it's really hardcore kind of journalism, because you're driven to try to get it right, because there are people who will notice if you don't.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's Mike is always letting us know, like, if I ever, because I'm not from the area, sometimes like I can never spell Mashalou right. And Mike is always like, they're going to know, and they're going to doubt you because you're not getting it right. I'm like,
yeah, right, you got to make it happen. Anyway, listen, what I did was, before you came on the program, I searched your name on the site, and I went back, I don't know, maybe 2 months to watch what you had been writing about. And you've been writing about a lot of very important core issues. But then slowly but surely, there was one story about the COVID-19, and there were 2 stories about it. And then 1 week, maybe, and then all of a sudden, now, of course, it's 24/7, as it is on BronxNet television as well. One of the things that's happening right now is this whole idea of no mail delivery.
Right.
So talk a little bit about that.
So with the mail delivery, honestly, the most reliable resource that I have gotten on this is Jeff Dinowitz, who's the assemblyman in the area, as you know. I was on the phone with him the other day because the USPS did give me like the fairly generic press statement. But my understanding is that someone at the Kingsbridge office was sick, and the office was closed for a few days, and also that they're wildly understaffed. I don't know that totally accounts for, it seems like people are still not getting any mail at all. I know some people.
You can include me, and I don't live in Riverdale, but you can include me in that, and many of my neighbors, we don't get mail either. So yes, the answer is yes, we're not getting mail.
Right. So it sounds like USPS had said to Dinowitz and the other elected officials, who all wrote a letter last week, that they were trying to prioritize like small packages, like people might be waiting for like medications and stuff like that. But I mean, at this point, it is Wednesday, and the last that I heard, of like obviously keeping an eye on social media, it seems like people are really still waiting for things. So I am not sure when that is going to get better.
Well, I'd love to put you backstage over there at the post office and see what's going on. My question, and which you can't answer, is if all of this mail is backed up, where is it? And then ultimately, if you've got, let's just say right now, for me, it's probably about 10 days of mail. If you've got that mail, it's not fitting into my mailbox.
Right. Yeah. I don't know what the plan for that would be. I've seen other people say that they're like, all right, well, I've gotten one day, but there's 8 days that are missing. So
a thick pile. The other thing I will mention, I actually worked for this people may or may not know, I worked for the Postal Service producing videos, promotional videos for them. Oh, maybe it's got to be 15 years ago. But one of the things I learned is, and they were very proud of this, that there's no storage space in any of their facilities because it motivates them to get the mail in and move it out, so that even if you say, hey, they're holding it or whatever, other than post office boxes, there's no place to put stuff. I'm very curious, where is that stuff? Has it been sorted? Is it going to have to be sorted? It's a very complex and serious problem.
Yeah.
And I know you don't have an answer for that, but it's a very big question for a very large, dense area in the Bronx.
Right.
Let's talk about a couple of other things. You wrote a little bit about let's see, social justice being on hold, or trying to figure out how to do things. Let's talk about that for a moment, because everybody, including this TV program and BronxNet Television, and you have to figure out how to do things from our homes. Talk a little bit about that article that you wrote about social justice.
Right. So I was getting emails about obviously things being moved to Zoom. One of the things was that, and I did mention it in that piece, was that they, Bend the Arc, Riverdale, had been planning on a rally outside of Senator Biagi's office in support of the bail reform that was passed at the beginning of this year. And that was sort of the thing that caught my eye, that they were like, initially had said this is canceled, and then it was like, we don't know when we're going to be able to do this. So I was really interested in seeing like how people want to have that same impact when you can't be gathering. But they had pretty effectively, Bend the Arc at that point, it had only been, I think, a week, had pretty effectively switched to online. I sat in on one of their Zoom meetings, and everyone was like prepared. They had someone from the national branch who was sitting in to sort of coordinate things. And I mean, there's something, I think it was Jennifer Scarlett had said that she hoped that people would take this as a time to learn. So even if the actions can't be the same, this is a good time that you can sit in. There are, news conferences that are going on. People are holding talks via Zoom. You can read, and then maybe be sort of well-informed and more prepared for when this is over to take action.
I do think that is an important thing that underscores really what we're all going through. We're finding new ways of doing things. And I can speak for even BronxNet Television, is realizing if we do things this way, and it's obviously not perfect, but if we do things this way, maybe we can move faster. Maybe we can do shorter segments or find more things because we can put it out in new ways. Let's get past it, and then we can enjoy the fruits of all of those labors. Another thing that you wrote about, and maybe you were one of the first to cover it, was one of the hot spots in New York City was SAR in Riverdale that had the first real cluster. I believe the number was 29 positive people at SAR. So I don't know if you want to talk about that, or you want to bring us up to date. I mean, are they doing well? I mean, obviously the school's closed, but give us just some perspective on that.
Yeah, so I mean, I remember like that day was one of those, so on Tuesdays is our production day. So we usually are in the office until pretty late, usually at least 9 o'clock. We don't go in until noon. And I think it was like 10 a.m. And our photographer, Julius, texted me a link to, I think it was Reuters was the first person to say that SAR had it. And I was like, okay, I guess that this is what we're covering now.
Let me just interject. If you're a journalist, even though it's an absolutely horrible thing, there's real motivation because this is a real story. It's a national, maybe even international story. And you get all of a sudden, I know you get the chills and you're like, okay, I got to do this and I got to do it right. Yeah. I'm into it. I know it.
were discussing like how would we even cover it, and at that point we had no idea that all of a sudden it was going to be like literally right across the street from our office. Yeah, so I mean, initially, obviously, before we knew this was going to go the way that it has, where at this point, New York is pretty much closed for business until the end of this month at least. They were initially, I think, closed just for a week, and then that was extended because they had everyone had to be quarantined for a certain amount of time, and that was the point where they were getting those positive tests. At this point, as far as I know, like those kids are all out of quarantine, but really at this point have nowhere to be.
Yeah, and let me just add that you can't go back to the school and find out how they are because they're literally all in their homes.
They're not there.
Yep. Right. So let's just wrap it up and talk one last item about which, of course, BronxNet is very concerned about the fact that all the campaigns are shut down. And, they had to change the petition situation. You now have to submit many fewer. I don't even know what I'm asking you. How are we going to run elections? We certainly, BronxNet, I know, is going to work at informing people. You've written about a couple of individual candidates, but there's a lot to do.
Yeah, there is a lot to do. That honestly is something like the long-term plan that I am not even sure of yet. Because we saw in Wisconsin, is it yesterday, that it has the potential to be a huge mess. I'm glad, like, I know New York State, not even just the city, obviously, is looking towards all mail-in ballots, delaying things. And I am sort of curious to see if candidates doing online events will have a better reach than they would if they had physical events.
That's an interesting question, because I would think no, because you've got to convince people to log in, and that's like an active thing instead of just like popping by an event. I will just interject and say BronxNet is trying to figure out how to, we run all the debates and stuff, and we'll try and figure out how to do that. I mean, that's going to be a challenge as well as doing the interviews and everything else. Anyway, Kirstyn, I want to thank you for joining us. This is your first time on, and I hope it'll be the first of many.
Yeah, I'll come back once we can actually get back in the studio too.
Fair enough. Thank you so much. And also we'll thank Síle Moloney from the Norwood News for joining us. And that's it for the Bronx Buzz. On Bronx Talk this week, we are going to get into remote learning, and we'll have a teacher and parents, as well as a child, a middle school student, to talk about what it's been like to try to go to school online, just like we're doing it tonight. Anyway, we'll see you around. Good night.